The laughter hit me before I even turned the corner. A group of teachers stood clustered near the bulletin board as I pushed my heavy cleaning cart down the freshly mopped hallway. Principal Carolyn Reeves's voice carried the loudest, sharp and mocking like it always did. She never missed a chance to remind everyone what I was, just the single dad janitor. Being the only parent who worked inside my daughter's school made me an easy target, but I kept my head high and my mouth shut. Morning, everyone. I paused just outside the open doorway, pretending to adjust the mop handle while their conversation continued. Carolyn glanced my way and didn't even lower her voice. The other teachers chuckled along, some looking slightly uncomfortable but saying nothing. I felt the familiar sting, but I reminded myself why I was really here. Honestly, what would this school do without our dedicated single dad janitor? Late again today, Ethan? I stepped into Lily's empty classroom to wipe down the desks before the next period. She was waiting for me at her usual seat, swinging her legs with that bright smile that made every hard day worth it. This quiet moment with my daughter was the only reason I kept showing up every morning. Daddy, look what I drew. It's our whole school. It's beautiful, sweetheart. You even got the big windows right. During lunch, I was outside replacing a broken downspout on the side of the building. A group of teachers walked past on their way to their cars and spotted me up on the small ladder. The laughter started again, louder this time because they thought I couldn't hear them. Careful up there, Mr. Brooks. We wouldn't want our janitor to fall. Who would clean the floors then? Later that afternoon, I climbed the narrow stairs to check the roof after last night's rain. From up here, the entire school spread out below me like a map I knew by heart. Every line, every beam, every careful detail. I knew them better than anyone walking these halls. You still stand strong, old friend. Back in our small apartment that evening, Lily helped me chop vegetables while the radio played softly. She chattered about her day at school, completely unaware of the laughter that still echoed in my head. Being a single dad meant our evenings were simple, but they were ours. Daddy, why do some teachers look at you funny sometimes? I tucked Lily into bed and read her favorite story like I did every single night. As her eyes grew heavy, I sat there thinking about the secret I had carried for 12 long years. No one here knew the truth, and for now, that was exactly how it had to stay. Ethan Brooks. Sleep tight, my little builder. The next day started early with another problem. The old boiler was acting up again. I was down in the dimly lit basement trying to fix it when I heard heels clicking down the stairs behind me. I was down in the dimly lit basement trying to fix it when I heard heels clicking down the stairs behind me. Tension was already rising. I could feel something shifting in the air. The boiler rattled like it was about to give up completely. I knelt in the dim light, fingers tracing the exact pressure valve I had calibrated myself 12 years earlier. My tools moved with quiet precision, while the old system fought back. I knew every weld, every joint, but I kept that knowledge locked away. Carolyn's sharp heels announced her before she reached the bottom step. She stood there watching me like I was part of the problem. Brooks, this is the 3rd time this month. If you can't keep the heat running properly, we'll have to look for someone more competent. I stood straight in front of her polished desk, my faded janitor uniform feeling smaller under the bright fluorescent lights. She slid a stack of complaint forms across the wood, her smile thin and satisfied. The message was clear. I was on thin ice. I met her eyes without flinching, even as the walls of my quiet life started closing in. Parents have been complaining about cleanliness and now the heating. As a single father, I understand you have responsibilities at home, but this is a professional environment. I'll handle it, Principal Reeves. The system is older than people realize. It needs more than just surface fixes. I pushed my cleaning cart down the long hallway, jaw tight, the echo of her words still ringing. 2 teachers whispered as I passed, their glances quick and amused. The judgment felt heavier today. I kept moving forward, 1 foot in front of the other, the way I always had. Ethan, I heard what she said. Are you really okay? I'm fine, Miss Carter. Just another day at work. Outside in the cold air, I steadied a loose railing on the playground stairs, checking the bolts with practiced care. My hands moved automatically, testing weight distribution the same way I once tested entire floor loads. Carolyn and a small group of teachers walked past on their way to lunch, their voices carrying clearly. Look at that! Our janitor thinks he's a construction worker now. Careful not to hurt yourself, Brooks. I entered the lounge to empty the trash bins. Conversations stopped the moment the door opened. Someone had left a printed job posting for a new maintenance supervisor right on top of the recycling pile. The hint was impossible to miss. They were already planning my replacement. Not yet. During recess, I slipped into Lily's classroom to fix a wobbly desk leg. She found me there and wrapped her arms around my waist. Her small voice trembled as she repeated what one of the other kids had said. The sting of adult cruelty reaching my daughter made my chest tighten. Daddy, why does Mrs. Reeves say you're not good enough for our school? Because she doesn't know the whole story yet, sweetheart. But that's okay. We're still here, together. I climbed the narrow metal ladder to the roof to clear a clogged drain after the morning rain. From up here, the entire building layout stretched below me like the blueprints I once drew by hand. My fingers brushed a support beam I had personally reinforced. For a brief second, I let myself remember the pride I felt the day we finished construction. Ethan Brooks, you were built to last. Just like I promised. Back home, I sat at our small kitchen table after Lily was asleep, staring at the locked metal box that held the old, rolled-up plans. The day's pressure sat heavy on my shoulders. Every laugh, every threat, pushed me closer to the edge. I couldn't risk everything I had sacrificed just to stay close to my daughter. I can't let them tear this down. Not after everything. The next morning, a steady drip had turned into a serious leak in the gymnasium ceiling. Water pooled on the floor while teachers and early students gathered. Carolyn marched straight toward me through the growing crowd, her face flushed with anger. The tension had finally snapped. I could feel the walls closing in completely. This is unacceptable, Brooks. Fix this right now or I'll have no choice but to start termination procedures. The leak had turned into something far worse. A loud groan echoed through the gym as a long crack spiderwebbed across the ceiling tiles above the basketball court. Water poured down in steady streams. Teachers were hurriedly moving students toward the exits while I grabbed my toolbox and moved against the flow of people. I knew exactly which beam was failing. I had designed the reinforcement for it 12 years ago. Everyone out! Stay clear of the center core! The hallway filled with the sound of little feet and worried voices as classes evacuated in orderly lines. I pushed through the crowd carrying a heavy steel support brace I kept in storage for emergencies like this. Carolyn stood near the front doors directing everyone, her face pale with anger and fear. Brooks, what do you think you're doing? Get outside with the others. I ignored her and moved quickly under the sagging section of ceiling. My hands worked fast, positioning the brace exactly where the main load-bearing joint sat. Years of hidden knowledge guided every move. I secured it with practiced precision, the same way I once oversaw the original construction. For a moment, the groaning stopped. The immediate danger eased. That should hold for now. Outside on the playground, teachers gathered the students while waiting for the all-clear. I stepped out briefly to catch my breath. Emily Carter watched me from across the grass, her expression no longer one of simple sympathy. Something in her eyes had changed after seeing me inside the gym. Did you see how he handled that? That wasn't normal janitor work. I climbed into the narrow crawl space above the ceiling to check the damage more thoroughly. My flashlight beam landed on the original steel beams I had personally inspected and approved years earlier. The flaw was exactly where I feared it would be after years of water exposure. The joint at column D4. Still holding, but barely. Back on solid ground, Carolyn called me into her office immediately. She was pacing behind her desk. Emily stood quietly in the corner, having been asked to stay as a witness. The atmosphere in the room had shifted. For the first time, I saw doubt in Carolyn's eyes mixed with her usual arrogance. "How did you know exactly where to place that brace, Brooks? You sounded like you knew this building better than the people who built it." "I've been maintaining it for years, Principal. I notice things." Later that afternoon, Emily caught me in the quiet hallway near the staff room. She had her phone in her hand and a look of quiet disbelief on her face. She had clearly been searching for answers. The midpoint of everything had arrived. My secret was starting to crack, just like that ceiling. "Ethan?" I looked up the construction records for this school. There was a lead structural engineer named Ethan Brooks involved in the original build. "Was that you?" I stood alone by my old truck after the school day finally ended. The weight of Emily's question pressed down on me. The choice was becoming impossible to avoid. Continue hiding and risk losing my job, or tell the truth and risk losing the quiet life I built to stay close to Lily. Everything I had sacrificed was now hanging in the balance. What do I do now? That night, after Lily fell asleep, I sat on the couch with the old metal box open in front of me, the original blueprints and my engineering license inside. The secret I had kept for 12 years to protect my daughter and stay in her world was threatening to come out. I had to decide before tomorrow whether I would finally reveal who I really was. Ethan Brooks. I can't keep hiding forever, but once they know, nothing will be the same. The next morning, I was called into Carolyn's office before the first bell rang. She stood behind her desk, termination letter already printed and waiting. Emily sat quietly in the corner, eyes downcast. The room felt smaller than ever, the air heavy with final judgment. Everything I had quietly protected for 12 years was about to be taken away in one cold conversation. "Ethan Brooks, effective immediately, your employment is terminated. The school board has reviewed the incidents and your questionable performance. We cannot keep someone who clearly doesn't belong here." "I understand." I walked down the long hallway carrying a small cardboard box with my name tag and a few tools. Teachers stood in their doorways watching me pass. No one spoke. The silence hurt more than any laughter ever had. My faded uniform suddenly felt like it no longer fit. I kept my shoulders straight, refusing to let them see me break. "Ethan," I tried to explain, "I'm so sorry." My mind slipped back to the day the school was finished. I stood on the same rooftop wearing a hard hat, the building gleaming new under the sun. Sarah stood beside me, her hand resting on her rounded belly, eyes shining with pride at the structure I had designed and overseen from the first blueprint. That moment felt like the beginning of everything good in our lives. "You built something that will last, Ethan. Our daughter will walk these halls knowing her father created them." 6 months later, the world collapsed in a sterile hospital room. Sarah lay pale against the pillows, her hand weak in mine as the cancer took her too fast. Lily was only a few weeks old, sleeping in the bassinet beside us. Sarah made me promise one final thing before she slipped away. "Promise me you'll stay close to her every single day. Don't let work pull you away like it almost did before." In that moment, I knew I would give up everything to keep that promise. Ethan Brooks. I promise, Sarah. I'll be right here with her. Back in the present, I loaded the cardboard box into the back of my old truck. A light rain had started to fall, matching the gray sky above. I could feel eyes watching me from the school windows. Being escorted off the property like this made the humiliation complete. The one place where I could watch over my daughter and protect the building I built was now closed to me. The one place where I could watch over my daughter and protect the building I built was now closed to me. That evening, Lily sat at our small kitchen table, her dinner untouched. The news had already spread through the school. Her small shoulders were hunched, and when she finally looked up, her hazel eyes were filled with confusion and hurt. Seeing my daughter carry the weight of adult cruelty was the deepest cut of all. "Daddy, they said you're not allowed to come to my school anymore. The other kids laughed at me today." "I'm sorry, sweetheart, but we're going to be okay. I'm still here with you. Later that night, I sat on the edge of Lily's bed while she cried quietly into her pillow. She whispered about the teasing she had endured, her voice small and broken. The pain in her words echoed everything I had tried so hard to prevent. For the first time in years, I felt completely powerless to protect her. I just want you at school with me, like always. After Lily finally fell asleep, I sat alone in the dark living room with the old blueprints spread across the coffee table. Everything I had sacrificed, my career, my pride, my reputation, had come crashing down around me. This was the lowest point. I questioned whether hiding the truth had been worth the cost after all. What have I done? Emily's urgent call pulled me out of the silence. The gym ceiling was failing again, and the temporary brace I installed was giving way under the weight. Lily stood beside me in her school uniform, eyes hopeful that her dad could still make things right. I couldn't let the building I designed hurt the children inside it. I picked up the heavy metal box containing the original blueprints and my engineering license. The hiding was over. We're going back, sweetheart. Today, they learn the truth. My old truck rolled into the familiar parking spot. Teachers and staff stood clustered near the entrance, watching the growing chaos inside. Carolyn stormed out the front doors the moment she saw me, her face flushed with fury at my return. I stepped out holding the metal box, Lily's small hand tight in mine. "You are fired, Brooks. Turn around and leave before I call security." "Not today, Principal. This school belongs to me more than it belongs to you." I walked down the long hallway with Lily beside me. Teachers lined the walls in stunned silence as we passed. Emily fell in step beside us, her presence a quiet show of support. The sound of dripping water from the gymnasium grew louder. I could feel every eye on the metal box I carried, like it held the answer to everything. "The school board chairman is already on his way." I made the call. Water streamed from the failing ceiling onto the basketball court. The temporary brace groaned under the strain. I set the metal box down in the center of the floor and opened it, unrolling the large original blueprints across a dry section of the court. My name stood bold at the bottom. Ethan Brooks, lead structural engineer and project supervisor. 12 years ago, I designed and built this entire school. Every beam you're standing under, every wall, every foundation, I drew it. I approved it. I oversaw every inch of construction. I led the growing group, Carolyn, Emily, and several teachers, up the narrow stairs to the rooftop. My hands moved across the support beams I had personally reinforced years earlier, pointing out the exact engineering details on the blueprints. The morning wind carried my words across the roof as the truth finally settled over everyone. This has to be some kind of mistake. No mistake. I gave up my career as a structural engineer the day my wife died so I could stay close to my daughter every single day. Back inside, the staff room filled quickly as word spread. Teachers who once laughed now stood quiet, eyes wide with realization. I stood at the front, blueprints still open, explaining the years of hidden maintenance I had performed out of love for this building. The atmosphere had shifted completely. No one was laughing anymore. I became the janitor so I could protect what I built and watch my daughter grow up inside these walls. I never wanted praise. I only wanted to keep my promise. The school board chairman's voice came through the speakerphone, calm and authoritative after reviewing the documents I had sent. Carolyn sat behind her desk, shoulders slumped, the termination letter now meaningless in front of her. Justice arrived not with shouting, but with quiet, undeniable facts. School board chairman, over phone. "Principal Reeves, your decision to terminate Mr. Brooks is reversed immediately. The board will be reviewing your leadership starting today." "Carolyn, I didn't know." I made the final adjustment to the ceiling brace, securing it properly with the knowledge only I possessed. Teachers who had mocked me now helped move equipment out of the way, their expressions full of regret. The leak slowed, then stopped. The building stood strong again because of the man they had underestimated. This school was built with care. it deserves the same respect in return. As I walked back down the hallway with Lily's hand in mine, the teachers parted respectfully. Several of them offered quiet apologies. The weight I had carried alone for 12 years finally lifted. Lily looked up at me with shining eyes, the pride in her smile worth every sacrifice. My daddy built our school. Yes, sweetheart. And I'll always be here to take care of it. 3 days had passed since the truth came out. Sunlight poured through the tall windows I once designed, warming the polished floors beneath my feet. Teachers who once laughed now offered quiet nods of respect as I walked without my cleaning cart. The air felt lighter, the silence kinder. My faded janitor uniform was gone. In its place, I wore a simple button-down shirt. The weight of 12 hidden years finally lifted. Ethan, I'm sorry we never saw you clearly. Thank you for everything you've quietly done for this school. I just wanted to stay close to Lily. The rest was never about praise. Carolyn Reeves stood behind her desk, shoulders no longer squared with authority. The usual sharpness in her eyes had softened into regret. She had been placed on temporary leave while the board reviewed her leadership. For the first time, she looked at me as an equal. The woman who had torn me down now struggled to rebuild the bridge she had burned. Mr. Brooks, Ethan, I judged you without knowing the man behind the uniform. I was wrong. Deeply wrong. I'm sorry. Apology accepted, Principal. Let's focus on what matters most, the children in these halls. The gymnasium stood solid and dry once more. The repaired ceiling showed no trace of the near collapse that had changed everything. A small group of teachers stayed after hours to help reorganize the space, following my lead for the first time. Emily worked beside me, her quiet presence a steady reminder that not everyone had doubted me. You built something beautiful here, Ethan, and you protected it when no one asked you to. It was never just a building. It was a promise I made to my family. Lily ran across the grass with her friends, laughter ringing freely under the golden sky. She turned and waved at me with both hands, her bright smile carrying no trace of the pain from days earlier. Watching my daughter thrive in the school I built filled every empty space the years of hiding had left behind. Daddy, everyone knows you made our school now. Come push me on the swing. Back in our small apartment, the evening felt warmer than it had in years. Lily helped set the table while soft music played. No more locked metal box. No more secrets weighing on my shoulders. We could finally speak openly about the past. The simple rhythm of father and daughter together had become even more precious. I told my class, you're the strongest dad ever because you built our whole school. And I'll keep taking care of it. And you. Every single day. I tucked Lily into bed and brushed a strand of hair from her forehead, just as I had done every night for 8 years. She hugged me tighter than usual, her small arms full of trust and pride. The tears from the dark days were gone. The promise I made to her mother in that hospital room had been kept through every storm. I'm so proud you're my daddy. And I'm proud to be yours, sweetheart. Later that evening, I climbed to the rooftop alone as the sun painted the sky in deep orange and gold. I rested my hand on the solid parapet wall I had once helped raise, feeling the strength of every beam beneath me. The building stood tall and quiet, exactly as I had envisioned it 12 years earlier. We stood strong together. The following morning, I walked through the front doors with Lily's hand in mine. Teachers greeted us with genuine smiles instead of whispers. I was no longer the single dad janitor they had laughed at. I was the man who had built their school and chosen to stay. Life had changed, yet the most important thing remained unchanged. I was still right here with my daughter every single day. They laughed at the single dad janitor, never knowing he was the one who gave their school its foundation. Sometimes the greatest strength isn't loud. It's simply choosing to stay.